Welcome to episode 389 of the DFO Rundown, as always presented by Bet365, where you can get in the game. The Stanley Cup Final start Wednesday, the NBA Finals on Thursday. Get in the game at Bet365. I'm Jason Gregor. Welcome in Frank Seravalli as the Stanley Cup Final. We record this on Monday, begins on Wednesday, and then Friday, game 3 next Monday, and it's a rematch, something we don't see very often. Only the third time since the NHL expanded to 21 teams back in 1980, when you had the Oilers and Islanders in 83 and 84. Islanders won first, Oilers won second. Detroit and Pittsburgh. Detroit wins in 08. Pittsburgh wins in 09. Now it's Florida, Edmonton. Florida wins in 24. We'll see who wins in 25. And Frank, how you doing?
I'm good. Excited to get to Edmonton, your city, later today. We'll have an in-person pod on Thursday, and giddy up. Let's go. Feels like a bit of a different series now that it starts in Edmonton as opposed to Florida. And I guess this is probably going to set the tone of our entire conversation. But the only thing that I keep thinking about as I try and size up this series is Connor McDavid's clip from intermission a few years ago, last year. Not bleeping good enough. Dig in right bleeping now.
After game 2.
After game 2, down 2-0. And think about what the vibe was going back to Edmonton. It was like, oh, Canada's cup drought is going to linger on again. That was the feel. I know Edmonton was excited to host, but especially after game 3, losing on home ice, tough spot. I just can't imagine that after, like, they should just take that impromptu speech, that intermission or end of game Connor McDavid clip, and like play that for the entire arena heading into game 1.
Or you play the Zach Hyman after game 7, where, you know, he said, guys, we'll be back here. Guys, re-sign, we'll be back. And he was somewhat prophetic in that, because there they are. Now, he's not back, unfortunately, and that's a big loss for Edmonton. But the Oilers are back, and the big difference this year, Frank, is McDavid and Draisaitl are fully healthy. Evander Kane's healthy, and I think that health matters. We've seen it. You asked Florida when they lost in 23, and Matthew Tkachuk was like barely playing, right? Like it does make an impact. It doesn't mean that Vegas wouldn't have won, and it doesn't mean that Florida wouldn't have won, but sometimes the cup winner is just a little bit of the healthier team.
I think health always plays a huge factor in it. I mean, think back to 23 when the Panthers got there the first time. Not having a healthy Matthew Tkachuk, I'm not saying it decided the series, but I think it went a long way in helping decide the series. It was one part of it.
For sure.
And missing Zach Hyman will hurt. It is really difficult to pick against the Panthers. I mean, that team is ferocious. They have a true killer instinct, meaning, and Paul Maurice talked about this on the bench a couple weeks ago during an in-game interview, believe it or not. And he said, I don't believe in the idea of killer instinct, because if you had it, it would be instinctual. But I actually think in this case that applies, because I do think that this team has something to it where without thinking, without blinking, they go for the jugular. Have a team that gives up a goal, will make it 2-0 or 3-0. They take advantage of opportunities in a real way.
Oh no, Florida's good. They're different than a lot of teams in the sense that they're very physical in how they forecheck. They get in on teams. Talk to a few defense, and it's not necessarily that they have like massive, Tom Wilson like hits where they run guys through the boards, but they're always on it. And as a defenseman was telling me, he goes, it's just annoying. Like, you're trying to break out and they're on you, and it's bordering on interference, but it's not interference in the playoffs, and they're good at it. And they know just how to get in there. They got an arm on you, and it's annoying. And that's what they do very well. Edmonton matches up because they're the second most physical team. Right. And I think, like, if you look when the playoffs began, Frank, and you would have, you can look at all the prognosticators. Most people would have said Vegas and Dallas are better teams than Toronto and Carolina. And Edmonton absolutely dominated both Vegas and Dallas. They beat them in 5. Right? They had one bad period against Dallas, and Vegas won on an own goal with less than a second remaining. Like, Edmonton was full marks for their series wins. And when I look at history, the great players, and Draisaitl and McDavid are great. They're amongst the greatest playoff performers we've ever seen. They usually find ways to win. That's why I find it hard to bet against it. Like, both teams are good, but I find it hard to say, like, are McDavid and Draisaitl going to lose 2 years in a row, especially now that they're healthy?
And that's kind of where I come out too, that those guys typically find a way to get their fingerprints on the cup. That I think there's been it feels like there's an inevitability to Edmonton eventually winning. Does that mean it's definitely going to be this year? It doesn't. But think about the other generational players. And I know we throw that word around a lot, but if you're just thinking Gretzky to Crosby to McDavid, like a real small select category, they all lost in their first opportunity. And the next time around, they didn't let it slip through their fingers, and they've added multiple since.
And the funny thing is, Gretzky lost to the same team that beat him. Crosby lost to the same team that beat him. And now McDavid can beat this team that he lost to, which is a very weird thing I uncovered about a week ago. So it makes for a fascinating one. I love the fact that it's back-to-back. We don't see that very often in the NHL. I think Matthew Tkachuk was accurate when he said the other day, goes, well, clearly we're the 2 best teams in the NHL. When both teams are in the Cup final 2 years in a row, you can't argue that they're the 2 best teams in the league.
Yeah, and I think here's the part that I would add to it, though, is we knew Florida was honestly, unquestionably one of the best teams in the league. And that's why I was shocked that so many people picked the Lightning in round 1. Jason. But that said, when it comes to the Oilers, I don't know that we were convinced heading into the playoffs that this team, was one of the very best teams in the league. Look, think about the way the regular season ended. Like, there's a heavy dose of recency bias that comes with obviously picking series and picking winners. If you go back to the beginning of the season, preseason in October, I picked the Oilers to win. This time around, starting the playoffs, I picked the Oilers to beat the Kings in round 1, but I picked them to lose in round 2 because of what we saw to begin round 1. It wasn't just the poor sort of end to the regular season. Maybe poor is a strong word. An average end to the regular season for the Oilers. But then gift wrapping games the way that they did to start that LA series, I was thinking there's no chance that if they do that again, that they're going to find a way to be successful against the Golden Knights or against the Stars. But here's the thing. They haven't done that. They're 12-2 since losing game 2 to the LA Kings. And the one of the 2 games that they lost was the one game that they gift wrapped with the 3 power play goals against that they gave up after having a 3-goal lead in the third period. It's kind of an amazing run of clean hockey that I don't know that could you have necessarily seen that coming for a team? You're around them every day almost. You've been to almost every playoff game and regular season game over the last number of years. Did you really expect the Oilers to play as clean as they have these playoffs?
Well, definitely not as clean. Like, I didn't expect them to really dominate Vegas and Dallas to the tune that they did. And so I give the team credit. I also give the coach credit. They came up with a game plan to say, we are taking away their scoring. They're off the rush. Because that's where Vegas and Dallas killed teams all year long. They were first and second in the NHL in goals off the rush. And Dallas had 2 goals in the series and Vegas had 3 off the rush. They virtually eliminated it. And Edmonton, I argued quite a bit throughout the year.
How did they do it, by the way?
Well, just a commitment. Number one, they break out very well now. So they reduce their turnovers because the Oilers could still be right at the league top of, nifty little plays 5 feet inside the offensive blue line that result in odd man rushes the other way. And they've stopped that. They virtually, I can't remember the last time the Oilers had a giveaway 5 to 10 feet inside the offensive blue line. Because, man, they used to, I know there's stats that track it, and I probably track it down from somebody, but I would guarantee you Edmonton would have been top 5, Frank, and maybe number 1 in that specific area. And so they've eliminated that. Number 2, well, they're just a different team. Down the stretch, McDavid missed half the games. Draisaitl missed more games. Kane didn't play a game. Frederick played 7 minutes. So they've got guys back in. Right now, Trent Frederick, people might say, well, what's he doing? He's only a fourth-line guy. Yeah, but he's on your fourth line who's only been on the ice for 3 goals against all playoffs. And they've been on for twice as many offense. Like, they don't Kasperi Kapanen, who I've argued when I watch practice, Frank, you'd see McDavid and Draisaitl. If you didn't have jerseys, you'd be like, who's that guy with the hair? He skates well. She does everything, but he's now putting it all together since he's got in the lineup. Like, Kasperi Kapanen is on the ice protecting a 1-goal lead and scores the empty net goal against Dallas. And you're like, what the hell's happening? Because I'll tell you right now, there's zero chance. I would have said Kasperi Kapanen on the ice protecting a 1-goal lead. But that's how much confidence the coach has in him, right? He's big, strong, can skate. And their defense moves the puck out very well. They don't spend a lot of time in their own zone. I think they're 1 through 6, which is actually only being together for 1 game, right? Ekholm last game, that's the first time all year all 6 defensemen played together. And I think that's a big advantage heading into the final.
Another big advantage is being able to have a next man up, like a Stetcher, that you could throw back in the lineup if one of those guys gets banged up this series, that you're not going to have to lose sleep over. Yeah. That's not a luxury that a lot of teams have had in these playoffs. So we talked about the idea of the generational players getting a second crack. We've talked about the Oilers playing a cleaner brand of hockey. As I'm picking the series and sifting through it, another thing that I've thought a lot about is quality of competition along the way. If I said to you that the Oilers faced better teams on their route to get here than Florida, would you agree?
Yeah, I think I would. Because of Dallas. Well, if you just look at regular season standings, Edmonton has faced 3 of the top 6 teams in the regular season in LA, Dallas, and Vegas. Now, I don't know if I would put LA in the top 6 when the playoffs began. For me, I didn't. So, but Vegas and Dallas, for sure. You look around how many people thought Vegas or Dallas were legit cup contenders. And they're both teams that in the last 4 years have played the 3rd and 6th most playoff games. So they know how to win, right? Dallas has went to the conference final 3 times in a row. They just can't beat Edmonton or Vegas. So, I think Edmonton, I would take Vegas, Dallas. I rank them higher than I rank Carolina, Toronto, but then I would rank Tampa Bay higher than I rank LA.
I would agree. Okay. So, you begin to sift through all these things and you say, and you formulate your pick. And then the next thing I ask myself is, what am I missing about Florida? What is it about Florida and the way that they play that might jam up the Oilers? Well, the truth is, we talked about some of it already. The Oilers haven't really had to face a forecheck like Florida so far these playoffs. If you think about the way LA plays, and that's the amazing part, that's the sloppiest series that the Oilers played, LA sat back. And I thought that played directly into the Oilers' hands, because if there's one thing that you would criticize, it is some of those the turnovers in that 5 to 10 foot pass radius that seem to happen routinely. You gave them time and space, so they were able to break out cleanly. The other teams, not that Vegas usually is pretty strong on their forecheck, and that would be problematic. The Oilers never didn't have the puck. Like, they always were controlling that game, and Vegas was on their heels. And that's why it was a short series. So if you're looking at Florida's forecheck and how they're going to attack Edmonton, is this going to be a series that Edmonton gets punched in the mouth and has to adjust a bit? And is that potentially, if you're looking for ways this could be different than last year, is that potentially what the Oilers need to manage as they are looking to get off to a much better start in the series?
Well, yeah. Well, the good news for Edmonton is almost impossible to get off to a worse start, Frank, because they were 0-3. So that's good news for them. I do think that the physical aspect of Florida is going to be a factor, because Dallas was an overly physical team. Vegas didn't really skate well enough to do it. So Edmonton is, though, but Edmonton's conversely going to be, a physical team for Florida as well. I look at Florida, and to me, the biggest one will be, can Edmonton control their third line? Because Edmonton's first top 2 lines, and we can get into the numbers there. I know there's Barkov and I know there's Bennett center in their top 2 lines, but I got a lot of numbers that tell you I will take Draisaitl McDavid's line over them. It's the third line of Florida. That's going to be the challenge for Edmonton. Are they going to have Henrique, Brown, and Frederick, although I think it might be the Janmark, Arvidsson, Podkolzin line. Because Janmark and Podkolzin, I think, are the two most reliable defensive forwards the Oilers have. Janmark's, the guy's incredibly smart on the ice. He's playing center. He's a really good skater. Like, his top end speed this year was actually, his top end speed was 24. It was one of the fastest top 10 in the NHL. So he can skate. Podkolzin doesn't give you a ton of offense, but he rarely makes a mistake defensively. And I think that's going to be the matchup Chris Knobloch looks at. So they're not going to outscore Florida's third line, Frank. But if they can come close to even, that to me is what might turn the series, because that line has absolutely feasted on the other opponents.
Well, that's one thing that really stands out to me is I don't know that, and this isn't a knock on Edmonton's guys, but I don't know that any team has enough hockey IQ to beat that third line. Like, you're talking about some serious big brain players.
Oh, yeah. No, I would agree.
And that's going to be part that, yeah, they can play any style you want, but for the most part, they're going to outthink you and outwit you. That's a difficult spot to be in, no matter who you're throwing at them.
Yeah, well, but then I look at the Oilers' top two lines. And so McDavid and Draisaitl, they'll team up every now and then, but they basically are running their own lines. And McDavid, his numbers, he's got a 60 shot. He's outshot the opponents 157-103. He's outscored them 18-13. Draisaitl's outshot opponents 143-99, outscored them 15-10. Now, Barkov, right? Everyone say, hey, great defensive player, and I totally agree. But his numbers, he has a lower shot for percentage. He has a lower goal for percentage. And he actually has a higher goals against per 60 at 3.17 to McDavid's 2.8. And Draisaitl's lower than Bennett. I think Edmonton's top lines, with those two guys healthy, that to me is the matchup, is can Florida find a way to slow them down? That to me is the big story. Like, if the third line's a third line for Florida, and that's great, but you got McDavid and Draisaitl. These are the third and fourth best playoff performers of all time. And Draisaitl's actually, he came into the playoffs averaging 1.46 points per game, which was fourth best amongst guys who have played at least 35 games. He's at 1.56. Like, he's higher. So is McDavid. McDavid came in at 1.58 and he's at 1.63. Like, no one's talking about it because they're like, McDavid's not going to score 40 points because they play fewer games, but he's basically averaging the same as last year. And Draisaitl's averaging more. And that to me is, I look at which defense pair and which line is it going to be? Is it going to be Jones and Mikkola against McDavid, or is it going to be Forsling against McDavid? That to me is what I'm fascinated about.
Mm-hmm. Give me your X factor for the series. One player that you think, if they have a massive series, will decide or help tilt the entire series.
Well, Stuart Skinner keeps
the obvious one.
Yeah, if Stuart Skinner keeps playing the way he is, Oilers win. And for Florida, I'm going to say, if Sam Bennett continues to score goals at the rate he's scoring, because let's be honest, that Sam Bennett's not a big-time goal scorer. He's already got 10 goals. Like, the guy's playing great. If that continues for Florida, their chances of winning are very high. I
just felt like Skinner might have been too obvious. Like, of course you need your starting goalie to have a good series, right? It's hard to do it in spite of that guy. It's especially with how disparate his games have been. For the most part, it's been feast or famine.
Yeah, well, it was 2 games since he's come back. He's been unreal.
Well, but there were still 6 losses that he was sub 830. So, like, I mean,
yeah, but like, when you look at the the Dallas game in the third period, all those power play goals, I didn't really blame Skinner for any of them, right? Mm-hmm. And then, like, he had 2 shutouts against Vegas. He lost on an own goal against Vegas. Right? So Skinner's game has not, like, that game that he allowed the own goal. Like, I know his save percentage goes under 9, but I don't think it's really reflective of how he played in the game. Right? Like, nowadays goalies, it's save percentage can be a little bit misleading because shots on goal are so much lower, right? Like, you can allow 3 goals in a game, but only face 25 shots and not play poorly and still have a below 900 save percentage.
Man, I have a tough one with this. I'm going to say, I was thinking about Nuge for Edmonton, because if he has a massive series, they're probably going to be in a great spot. 9 points last round. But I think I'm going to go with Jake Walman. I think the way that Walman has been pivotal to this team's success, how cleanly he's exited the zone and helped them be efficient, that if he has a really strong series, that Edmonton's probably going to be in a position to win.
Like we talk about Florida's third line advantage. Edmonton has that exact same advantage in their third pair on the blue line, right?
Agreed.
Klingberg and Walman are they're much better than Florida's third pair, right? And how they move the puck and skate. And actually, I have an article coming out today. I did a one-on-one with Walman. And like this guy came in here, Frank. He'd only ever played one playoff game. It was game 4 when he was a rookie, when St. Louis got swept by Colorado. He came in the 4th game, played 15 minutes, and so he really had never experienced playoffs. And right from day one, this guy has he leads the NHL. He's tied with Lundell in plus minus. I know some people don't like that stat, but he's 5-on-5. He's got a really, what is he, 60 plus something. 5-on-5. I think it's 16-8 or 16-9, something like that. He's second in the NHL in block shots with 43. Esa Lundell has more, but he played 2 more games. So, Walman's blocking tons of shots. He's producing points. He's physical. He skates well. He's a rare combination of a puck transporter, but also a puck distributor. And I like that pick because he's played very well. He's probably maybe been, one of the quietest contributors on Edmonton. He's played, I think, the 5th or 6th most minutes total of any Oiler.
He's a low-key MVP candidate for the Oilers. I'm not kidding.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
Not for Conn Smythe. I mean, if you're thinking about most vital contributors to this run,
oh yeah,
I think he's 3.
Yeah, he's his playoffs remind me of for last year. I thought Oliver Ekman-Larsson was unbelievable for Florida last year. And Jake Walman, while he doesn't put up massive
I think he's
points,
been better than Ekman-Larsson, to be honest.
Yeah. Ekman-Larsson was good for Florida last year, man. Really good.
So my guy for Florida is going to be Brad Marchand.
Yeah, well, that third line, you're right. They got to keep scoring.
He had a very quiet round 3, 2 points. And he was such a factor, such a force in the first 2. And it's not to say that Florida can't succeed without him. Of course they can. But that third line, if he has a monster series, I think you might be able to book Florida to win, to be honest. If they're feasting on the Oilers, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, Osterino was the other guy I was debating on because he's had a hell of a playoffs. And now he got banged up in the last game. I know they say everything's good, but how good is he, right? That's what we talked about off the start. Health matters. And if his injury is limiting him a bit, well, that's probably going to limit that line's success rate because that line has been fantastic.
So I saw you tweet from Sunday's practice, McDavid out for a bit and then left. What's your read on that?
I think it might have been an equipment issue. Connor he's like a thoroughbred, and anytime something's a little bit off. And so I think it might have been an equipment issue. Knobloch was very quick. There wasn't hums and haws, and he's just no issue. So he'll be playing. Connor Brown's going to be ready to play, Frank. So I would think he would come in for Jeff Skinner and give Skinner credit. The guy's played 2 games. He has 2 points. He scored a goal, right? I think that, everybody steps up at a key time, but Brown offers more from speed and a defensive role, especially when they're probably going to match up against that third line. So, but McDavid, I think it was, what? Here we are. It's Sunday. After last year and him playing through a core injury, I think anytime he didn't feel whatever's off, that he just stepped off the ice. But I talked to a few people around the team, and they don't think there's anything to it.
So give me your pick. Who in how many games, and then give me your Conn Smythe winner.
Well, I'll stick with who I picked at the start of the playoffs, Edmonton. And I'm going to go outside the box because I thought about it last series and I didn't have the guts to do it because I find 6 is always a safe pick. So I'm going to say 5.
Oilers in 5.
Yeah. And
so how do you view the series going? You go win the first 2, win 1 in Florida, win on home ice?
Yeah, maybe. Edmonton's been really good on the road, but yeah, that would probably be more realistic, I think. Yeah. I haven't even thought about how, but yeah, I guess that makes sense rather than win 2.
That's why the 5 is bold because you're
sweeping
one of the pairs, and I just don't know which one you view them sweeping.
Well, I looked, and last year, remember, like Florida swept in Edmonton, so it's possible. And home ice advantage, Frank, in the salary cap era is a big advantage in the Cup final. 13-6 for the home teams. The home teams have actually won the last 5 Stanley Cups. St. Louis was the last road team who started on the road to win. So home ice advantage does matter in the Cup final more than a lot of.
Such a flawed stat too, because like it just means you're also the better team going in. You had a better record. Of course, the record should be
but
better.
home ice, if you look at it earlier in the rounds, it's not as high of a percentage, like 13 out of 19, right? It's not 60 some percent.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then Conn Smythe, I'm going to go with Leon Draisaitl.
Okay. I'm going to go Oilers in 7. I think this is a back and forth series. I don't know how many times you're going to see a team win 2 in a row, to be honest. And I've got Connor McDavid winning the Conn Smythe for the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, like I looked at Draisaitl and McDavid's numbers, and right now, like they're separated by a point. You look at, Draisaitl has a better goals against per 65 on 5. He's got a higher goals for percentage 5 on 5. Shot 4 percentage is the same. They've been to 3 overtime games. He has 2 overtime goals and an assist. Now, not that McDavid's been bad, and then the other reason, Frank, if history is going to repeat itself with McDavid following in the footsteps of Crosby and Gretzky in their first Stanley Cups that they won, when they beat the team that beat them, Mark Messier won it in 84, Gretzky's running mate, and Malkin won it in 09, Crosby's running mate. So I'll go with Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a voting thing too. Like,
oh, and hey, trust me, Sidney Crosby, I love him as a player. He didn't deserve to win both of those Conn Smythe. I thought Phil Kessel was their best player in 2016. I still would argue that.
And that's how we ended up with transparency in voting.
Yeah.
I wrote the story after the fact saying that I had polled all of the voters and revealed that it was the closest Conn Smythe ballot ever, or couldn't be any closer. There were only a point or 2 separated. And I voted for Kessel because I thought Kessel probably should have won. That HBK line was insane.
Oh, they were unbelievable. Yes.
And yeah, since then we've sent out all of the Conn Smythe Trophy voting results.
Yeah. It'll come down to, I think, if Edmonton wins, which of those 2 players is better in the final? Because right now you can't really separate between the 2 of them. You could make an argument for either one. It's really close. If Florida wins, I'm going to say that Sam Bennett wins the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, that'd be a good pick.
Let's bring in Ty Yaremchuk coming up. We're going to talk lots of coaching moves around the NHL to discuss, and of course, some free agent chat and more. But first, Ty Yaremchuk. Welcome to the pod. Ty, how you doing?
I am good to go, boys. Ready to roll with another edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup Final at Bet365? They got you from game props, player props, totals, and money line. You can even bet on futures like you guys had it, the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and a fun one that I always get a chuckle out of, which is who will be past the Stanley Cup first. Anyways, you can get it all at Bet365, an official partner of the Stanley Cup Final. Download the app, get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Greg's, Frank and I joked about it or talked about it the other day, but who do you think is the favorite in the Stanley Cup Final handoff for both the Oilers and the Panthers?
Ooh. So McDavid, who would he pass? He's going to pass it. Well, he might pass it to Nugent Hopkins, longest serving order.
Yeah,
it'd be hard to overlook Draisaitl, but I think Draisaitl would say Nugent Hopkins gets it. He's been here long.
Yeah, so it goes Nuge at plus 300, then Draisaitl at plus 320. And then for the Panthers, Nate Schmidt is the favorite. And then a couple of other newcomers, Seth Jones and Brad Marchand, are the top 3 for the Florida Panthers. But anyways, talking a little bit about...
hold on a second. So how does that bet work? It's only if that team wins it? Or do you have to get the winner of the winner?
Yeah, you got to get both.
Plus.
You got to get both.
So that's... The odds aren't great for that, for a parlay. I mean, if that's what you're thinking about it, like, right?
Yeah, but I mean, for Edmonton, like, it really is just down to those 2 guys there, and the Oilers, for what it's worth, are favorites. And I believe the favorites won something like 90% of the last few Stanley Cup Finals. Like, the favorites have been pretty dominant.
Like the wild card for Edmonton would be Matthias Ekholm. because you know how sometimes they go for the longest serving. I still think it's going to be Nugent Hopkins, but I could make the argument why it'd be Draisaitl too, because they're like peas and carrots, those two.
I actually think the wild card for Edmonton is Corey Perry, because he's the longest serving player by games played and by Stanley Cup playoff games played, and having played
won
in so many damn finals in the row. It doesn't matter though. He's been to so many finals in a row and hasn't won. I think there's a solid chance that he's the first guy that gets it before Nuge.
Okay.
What are the odds on Perry?
12-1 plus 1,200 or 13-1, whatever.
And I would say if I were looking at it from Florida's perspective, even though he just got there, Brad Marchand is a live dog.
Yeah. Plus 1,200 for Marchand.
Yeah, but I think the guys who have already won it, I think they almost want to see someone else who hasn't won it carry it first.
I don't know, man. It's been 18 years since Perry won it, right?
Yeah. And Marchand was 2011, so 14 years. So
it's a long time and a lot. I mean, Perry's closing in on top 5. Is that right? Top 5?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, he could be third, I think, by the end of the series.
It's crazy. All right. I got a couple of questions here for you guys. First off, you were talking about Edmonton and Florida's paths to the Stanley Cup Final. And there's always kind of this, I think it's a very dumb narrative, but it's kind of a funny joke Oilers fans have where they're like, oh, we beat the Flames into a rebuild and we might have beaten the Canucks into a rebuild. And it's like, okay, there were other factors at play than just losing in the playoffs to the Oilers. But of the 3 Western Conference team the Oilers beat to get here, blank will look the most different next year, if you want to keep that sort of, in air quotes, trend or joke going. But Frank, out of those 3, which one will look the most different next year?
I would probably say the Kings, because they have a new general manager. They realize that losing 4 years in a row to the same team doesn't make a lot of sense. And they've got a few older players that, to be honest, they need succession and contingent planning for. And I think that part, coupled with some flexibility and a new vision, new path, leads itself to the Kings being the most different of the 3.
It's a really good question because you can make an argument for all of them. I'm going to go with Dallas because they're the first team in NHL history to lose in the conference final 3 years in a row. And, they got to try to change something. I don't know what the problem is. They don't have a boatload of cap space available. That's their challenge. So
I think they're the team most locked in because of that.
You know what? Now that I talk myself, I want to change my vote to Vegas because I think they're the most willing to make a major move all the time. And they've done it time and time again. And so I think they will, ruthless is the wrong word. They remove emotion from their decisions. And we're like, I don't care if this guy's been with us for this long. We got to make a change. And I think Vegas is going to swing big for Mitch Marner. And I think they're going to swing big in some trades. I think they're going to revamp their blue line. It's been the same blue line for 5 years. And I just think they'll look to make a change there.
Let me flip that question around now and ask you the same thing about the Panthers and their path through the Eastern Conference. I think Tampa, you can maybe kind of put off to the side, but Toronto, obviously a lot of rumblings there. And then, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes, are they going to sway or go away from their usual strategy of just running it back? But Greg's, which one of the Panthers' Eastern Conference opponents will look the most different?
Yeah, well, they also face good teams. That's what's crazy. Like, these are good teams, and it shows you, man, like there's big changes all the time. Toronto's, I think, still the obvious one just because I think they have to make some moves. Frank's talked about Morgan Riley. You look at Mitch Marner, maybe John Tavares. Their GM came out and said, we have to, change our DNA, our thinking. So do you think you can run back the same guys, or do you need to bring in one or two different players that can help change that mindset of your team? So I'm going to go with Toronto.
I mean, I think Toronto makes a ton of sense as an answer, just by nature of where they've also arrived at this in terms of contracts. But to be different, I'm going to say Carolina. I think a lot of the makeup of Carolina will be the same, and I think they'll have the same structure and same coach and same everything else that goes into it. But I think their nature is always, like Vegas, is always to be super aggressive, and they've got a ton of cap space. So I look at Carolina and say they're always trying to move the ball a little bit further. Look how different that team was year over year and still got back to the conference final. They're probably going to be a bit different next year too.
We obviously haven't had a pod since the Oilers and Stars series ended, but the one thing that was a big headline, and it continued throughout the weekend with both DeBoer and Ottinger speaking, but DeBoer pulling Ottinger after the game, having his comments about it as well. There is a blank % chance Pete DeBoer is back as the Stars head coach next season. Frank, did his comments afterwards change your mind on his job status?
What do you mean you didn't have a chance to talk to Jake Ottinger yet? Well, that was a very odd end of season availability. You spent 4 hours in a metal tube going 500 miles an hour where you can't do anything else but either sit there and drink or talk to someone. You mean to tell me, like, it almost made it sound like, oh, I couldn't find him yet. Like, well, you guys are on the same bus, on the same plane. Obviously, you had exit day interviews. I'm just calling BS on that. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I thought, by the way, Jake Ottinger handled himself with total class and took the high road. Franchise goalie being yanked. I don't think the Stars are making a coaching change by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think that for a team that hasn't been able to get over the hump, when you watch that play out the way that it did and almost how panicked it seemed to be, when you then look at a coach who hasn't gotten over the hump in his career, does the question need to be asked of him?
Yeah, fair question. I guess I would look at it if the the coaching of Dallas, what could a different coach have done to allow them to have success this year against Edmonton? Right? That would be my first question. So it's easy to change coaches in today's NHL, and it seems to happen more than ever. DeBoer, the thing, he answered the question straight up honest. Now, people didn't like it. But hey, why did you pull him? Well, he'd lost 6 of his last 7. We were down 2-0. Maybe he could have shortened it, but it was the truth. He'd lost 6 of the last 7. Stuart Skinner, who people rip on as saying is terrible, had outplayed him significantly in those 7 games. And I know that goalies don't play, it's not like they battle each other, but as Stuart Skinner says, you always look down the ice and you want to be better than the other guy. So I don't think what he said was really that outlandish. It's just nowadays everybody gets over sensitive. Oh, you know what? Like they always complain. Well, the guy never says anything. And then when he says something, well, he shouldn't have said that. I don't have a problem with what he said, to be completely honest. I don't really have an issue with it. The only thing that I found odd was the timing of the pull. So
yes,
usually you pull your goalie or you call a timeout. Why do both? And then you call the timeout. And obviously now, maybe, hey, I've coached at a much lower level, but sometimes your emotions get the best of you. So maybe in his head, he thought, okay, I'm changing my goalie here. And then he comes over to the bench. Okay, guys, we got to. And then he doesn't tell Jake that I'm pulling you until the end of it, right? And then that's the part that looked bad. So I think all he would have had to say was, you know what? This is why I pulled him. I wish I would have worded it better in the moment to say, Jake, you're out. Casey DeSmith, you're in. And then you have 30 seconds to tell the team, right? But maybe he doesn't tell the team before the timeout, because what if you come in and say, Jake, you're in, Casey, you're out. The rest of your players are like, what? We're pulling our goalie? And they don't even listen to what he has to say after. So maybe that's why.
But then he admitted that he was thinking about starting DeSmith to begin with. It was almost like he was announcing to everyone, I made the wrong choice. I should have started DeSmith and went with my gut. Yeah,
and that's fair, right? Man,
then say that part too.
Yeah. No, because I think like, I know everybody said, well, Ottinger, he can't make it, you can't really blame him. I'm like, but Steven Valiquette outlined. Do you know what the percentage to score on a breakaway is in the NHL? 33% of breakaways get scored on. 33. So, and hey, Matthias Janmark, Matthias Janmark in the playoffs is infinitely better on breakaways than he is in the regular season, right? Like, he'll score in game 7 on a breakaway in the Cup final. He'll score against Dallas. He can't score with a wide open net on a breakaway in the regular season, but still, it's Matthias Janmark. you're not facing down McDavid or Draisaitl, so you can make the argument that you need a save from your goalie there.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you, because if you're right, if I say that about Skinner, then the same exists of Ottinger. My only point is that you're now dealing with a goalie, though, who did not yet begin an 8-year, $66 million contract. Pete, he's going to way outlive you in Dallas. So why wouldn't you just be straight up with everyone then and say, hey, I talked to Jake and we're all good. And I would have made it a point, again, not saying me and I'm better than or whatever, but I would have wanted to get that out and clear the air before stepping to a podium as a coach to then address the public. I'd want to have that situation handled, done, and buried so that I can look at everyone and say, yeah, we're moving past it now. We were in a spot where he didn't play well. Maybe I didn't handle everything perfectly, and he's our future. He's our franchise goalie. He's the guy. Why is that so difficult? Instead of like, oh, well, I didn't talk to him yet. No, I don't know. Like, was he lost? Were you lost? How'd that happen?
Well, and then he had the comment about like, well, Jake had that upper body thing we were monitoring or whatever he said. And it's like, okay, but if that was like you would have easily said that in the moment after the game. Like that just felt like he was laying in bed at night being like, hey, what can I say to justify this? Oh, yeah, he's hurt. He had that upper body thing, of course. So
transparency. It's in everyone's best interest.
Yeah. All right, boys, there you go. That is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Now, speaking of coaching, that's a good segue. There are some coaching moves that have just occurred since we last spoke. Lane Lambert is in Seattle. Hadn't been a name that people have heard. Of course, he coached. He's been a head coach before with the Islanders for a brief time, and he's been an assistant in the NHL for quite some time. This hire surprised you, Frank?
Only in the sense that he wasn't a name that was being talked about a ton. Obviously recent NHL head coaching experience on Long Island. He succeeded the guy that was his mentor and his boss for so long. I mean, he had been the guy that traveled around and around with Barry Trotz and was obviously highly respected for his connection to Trotz and got his shot on Long Island. And it lasted basically a season and a half. Spent this past season as the associate coach in Toronto and then moves on. I do think it caught some people off guard that he'd get a job this quickly again, basically just 18 months removed from his last NHL head coaching opportunity. But maybe that was the smart play for Seattle in the sense that, look, we've been real open and honest about where we think the Kraken are and that they're not a team that's close to competing. Why go wild? I'm not saying go in and hire a bad coach. That's not what I'm proposing at all. But why go absolutely crazy trying to find the best candidate? Find someone that you think can grow with you, that has opportunity, that has the ability to advance your team. And if he's the right guy for later, then great. But if he's only the right guy for the meantime, then that's okay too. You don't need to spend crazy to do it, and your team can still have a shot.
Yeah, I think that's valid. You look, Lane Lambert is, like he's was a head coach for many years in the American League, and won over 40 games every time, and then has been an assistant coach since 2011 for the majority of the time, or associate coach, and then had the year and a bit in Long Island. So has lots of NHL experience. We'll see. The Islanders. I don't know if you could have done a whole lot more with it. He did make the playoffs. The first year he made it as a head coach. So, and they had missed the playoffs the year before. So, in that regard, I guess you can say it was a success. But it seems when you think of Lane Lambert and the whole situation, it's not bad, but his name really wasn't out there. It's kind of, well, this is Seattle, and not a lot of people talk about him, and not a lot of people are talking about their head coach. So, in a way, it seems like a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple other teams that were in similar spots that instead of going after the big shiny toy, might have just been better off hiring someone that can be with you for the here and now and see if they grow into that. You're the coach of the future. But in the meantime, we need a stopgap guy.
Yeah, makes sense. The Islanders, we had talked about it a while back. I thought, hey, I think there's a chance Darsh Waugh, they're both French Canadians. They're fiery. You probably understand him. And lo and behold, Patrick Waugh is going to stick on as the head coach of the Islanders.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say a surprise. Definitely was a question that was lingering out there. The fact that the team, even put out a thing saying Patrick Waugh will remain, confirms what everyone has been talking about, that this was a talking point. And I will say what's interesting is that the Islanders obviously are making changes at the assistant coach position. And you look back to the guys that were assistants, they had deep connections to Lou Lamoriello. So if you now bring in or allow Patrick Waugh to hire his own staff, maybe that's a different feel too. And they also made significant changes, basically clearing house in Bridgeport, which was much needed in the AHL, that the Islanders have a chance to look really different from a coaching perspective.
Yeah. Well, hey, tell the Islanders change the roster, man. It's hard for me to blame the coach. Now, as you said, maybe the coach shouldn't publicly question his GM, but clearly he didn't like some of the moves. So away we go. We'll see what changes under the new GM in Long Island, which leaves 2 head coaching jobs open. There's Pittsburgh and there's Boston. There was a report that Marco Sturm was going to be the next head coach of the Bruins. That's like a week ago. The timing of that seemed a little odd.
Yeah, the crazy part about that report was that I believe at the time the report was made that Marco Sturm had not even met in person yet with the Boston Bruins. So I think the Bruins had done a ton of work over Zoom, unless someone was local, and had, spent a long time interviewing a lot of different people to understand the position. And then I think brought people in late last week for some in-person interviews. And I think they're down to their final strokes of putting that all together. So I would expect at some point this week, probably not on a Cup Final game day, although we did see a trade a couple hours before a Cup Final game last year, that you'd see a coaching hire for the Bruins at some point this week, as the combine also now begins in Buffalo. And then there's Pittsburgh. Look, I've heard the name Mitch Love a lot in Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that's going to be the guy. I just think he's in strong contention or consideration. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see where Pittsburgh lands, because they want to try and spool this up relatively soon. The Penguins are thinking, why can't we be the Capitals? Which is a crazy thing, because forever the Capitals were thinking, why can't we be the Penguins?
Yeah.
But now the tables have turned.
Well, you got to go out there and find your Dylan Strome. Hard to find, right? Like that was an unbelievable find for the Washington Capitals, no question.
It's not just Strome.
No. They made a lot of other good moves too.
And now their pipeline is stacked.
They're drafting. Yes. Like Pittsburgh can't match that. Like they got so many good young players there. Now in Boston,
you need picks to be able to do it. And Pittsburgh doesn't. Like Sam Dickinson being part of the San Jose Sharks organization because you felt the need to trade for Erik Karlsson is a huge indictment.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Now, quickly for Boston. So Sturm's obviously one of the candidates. Jay Woodcroft, any other names you hear? Is Woodcroft in the mix? Not in the mix?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I really don't know. I would have been very surprised if we got through this entire coaching cycle with so many different jobs that Jay Woodcroft didn't get one of them. But we'll see.
It's good meetings. Also, shout out to the London Knights, who won the Memorial Cup on the weekend, joining Cornwall, Kamloops, and Windsor as the only franchises to have 3 Memorial Cup championships since way back in 1972. So it's a big win
for Gavin McKenna and the Medicine Hat Tigers as well.
Yes.
My understanding is that he's going to be visiting some NCAA schools this week. I would expect Michigan State, and I think there's probably a 3rd or 4th team out there that he might visit with. I've heard rumblings about Penn State, but not confirmed yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to look at. Like Gavin McKenna is going to make more money than he's ever going to need playing in the NHL. So money can't be the factor to go to NCAA. It's going to be, is half the games better for your development? You get more time in the gym. That's what they're going to have to weigh. And some would argue that more puck touches and more playing time might be better. So I'm kind of curious because money can't be the factor here. He's going to make so much money in the
not just
NHL.
games and not just practice. It's also the ability to properly strength train because
No, that's what I said. Yeah.
yeah, like it's a whole off ice thing too. And there's a lot more available to you. Like as a student athlete, you know, let's just say you pick one of those schools, one of those Big Ten schools, right? You've got football games you can go to, be part of the community around the basketball team or whatever else. The high level of competition among those athletes being in that same orbit, understanding what those other programs do for success, like plus the academic side and being a student, like I think the opportunity is unmatched compared to being, you know, in a major junior program, but that's just me. And I think just look at some other guys that are top end players. You're talking top 10 picks. The guy that's very likely to go right behind McKenna in 2026, Keaton Verhoff, he committed to North Dakota last week. Him and Cole Reshney both leaving Victoria. Huge.
Yeah, that decision though, Frank, I'll be honest, as a 17-year-old, because he's young, as a 17-year-old, it's hard enough as a 17-year-old competing against 19 and 20-year-olds. You're going to be a 17-year-old against 21 and 22-year-olds. That's going to be a real big adjustment. And it'll be hard to be as much of an impact player there.
I'll make you a bet right now. Not only will Keaton Verhoff go number 2 in 2026, but he'll be in the NHL as an 18-year-old.
He'll go with the direct jump. Okay.
Right away.
Yeah. Wow.
I think he's that good.
Interesting.
And I think McKenna's that good.
Oh, no.
I don't know if we're going to see.
McKenna's a no-brainer.
I don't know if we're going to see someone from this class play in the NHL next season.
Well, Schaefer be better off not going. 100%. And if you're the Islanders, why would you? If that's the guy you pick, right? Hagens isn't ready for the NHL. Like, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I've argued this for years. There's the amount of players. There's no need to rush. Rush doesn't help you at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's been proven time and time again at any level. Rushing from AAA midget to going up to U18, you have to, you know what? Some 16-year-olds are better off playing another year of U18 than they would, or even, you know, than going to major junior. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the cup. But by the way, who are you picking? You didn't pick. Who are you picking?
I did. I said.
Oh, you picked Edmonton in 7. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Come on.
Yeah,
Wake
that's
up.
right. We will. We'll see you on Thursday. Well, actually, we'll see you tomorrow. That's a rundown brought to you by Bet365.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.